All right, in this example, I want to take some NHL stats and I want to be able to do a search on the player and see how many games they played, maybe how many goals they scored, things like that. Now, I don't want to have to input all this information manually into the program. So this is something maybe you could find a CSV file or a TXT file on the internet and be able to upload this. Now, I've already made my own or found my own. I didn't want these to be too long. So what I'm going to do is just add them in here. So I'm just going to drag and drop them all in here. So you can see they're all TXT files. They've all been named with camel casing, all fairly simple. So like games played, last names. So I went and just took like the top scores from the season. So Draisaitl was number 1, McDavid. Now all of these arrays are actually in parallel. So meaning Draisaitl would have scored 110 points, McDavid 97. The team that they played for, so Oilers, and the amount of games they played. Okay, so all of that I've just loaded in. All I have to do is drag and drop, which is the nice thing about being able to use files. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is actually get all of those things into my program in an appropriate way. That means we're going to have to use our fetch API again. So loading arrays, or loading text into arrays. And again, these are parallel, meaning index 0 for all of them is all Draisaitl. Index 1 is all McDavid stuff. Now you can probably make this into an easier function, but I'm going to do this the slow way so you can see it a few times again. The first thing I'll do is I'm going to fetch my games played .txt. So once I've gotten that stuff, I'm going to take that raw data, use an arrow function, and what I want to do is turn that raw data into text. So that's going to turn it into a string. Okay, so once we have it in string form, then I want to take that data, still need that. So at this point, let's get rid of all that. I'm going to take that data that we're getting out of here, and I'm going to turn that into a array. So I'm going to do let. You know what? I should probably define my arrays first. So defining arrays. So I need let games played. We'll just let that be an empty array. And what else? I'm going to need let last names also be empty. We'll do points. And let teams. Okay. So now we've got our 4 arrays. So now I can go back to my fetch and say, okay, so we've uploaded it, we've turned it into text, that data, but now I want to turn that data and split it into my array. Now if I look at, well, yeah. So we're going to say games played is going to be equal to that data dot split. Now I got to decide how I'm going to split this. If I'm going to go back to games played, you can see I split each person's with or each player with a space. So that's how I'm going to split it up then. So now I've got a space there. All right, and let's just make sure it's working. I always like to just double check things before I go in. I'm going to do a lot of copying and pasting here, which tells you probably there's an easier way. But let's just see. Oh, okay, so you're seeing it came up blank. That's because this fetch doesn't happen instantly. That's why we have to use then and then. So if I want to see if this is actually working, I have to cut this. And I know you're not going to like this. I'm going to have to put braces here. So I'm going to put a brace so I can have multiple things happening here. And then I'll console log. And then I'll end this last then statement. So only after it does the data split will it actually do the log. So let's see if it worked this time. Unexpected token at 12:14. Oh, I did not close my brace. That's why. Okay, there we go. So this brace is closing my function, and then I need my, whoop. I'm going to just tab this one over. There we go. So this then statement is now closed with this bracket. Brace is now closed here for my function. So there we go. Now we've got it all into an array. One thing I don't like though is there's these little, like it looks like there's strings right now. I want these to be numbers, because like what if I want to make the games get bigger? And that's actually not that hard. All I have to do, and maybe I guess I'm going to keep it in these braces now, is I'm going to go games.played. You know what? I don't even have to do that. So I'm going to split it, and then I'm going to do a dot map. So what dot map does is it's going to turn my string into the number version of it. So meaning if it was the string and it can match it to the number, it's going to do that. So let's see how that looks. So now you can see there's no little apostrophes there. So now they are actually integers. I have mapped them from their string to their integer value. So again, we split it based on the space, and then I mapped it all at once. Now I don't need this console log anymore to make sure that this is working. Let's see if I can get to one line. I can. Almost. There we go. So again, I fetched it, then I turned it to text, then I split it based on this space, and at the same time I also just turned it into its number variation. Alright, so we're good. I don't know, do I need this? I don't, yeah. That should be on the same line. Let's see if it'll do it for me. It will. Actually don't need that. There we go. Okay, perfect. So we've done one, which seems like a lot of work until you realize that all of this can just be copied and pasted again. And we just got to go get our next text file, which is games played. No, we're going to do last names next. So last names. Make sure I spelled everything the same way. It is names. So same thing, turn raw data, turn it to text. Then I'm going to turn the data and split it. If you go look at the last names for me, they are also split up by spaces. What else? Now here though, these are names, so I actually just don't need to map it to a number, so I can just delete that part. There we go. And now the next one I'm going to do is points. So points is a number again. So I'm going to keep this dot map here. I believe points, yeah, just points. Wasn't that creative? Points. And the last one is teams. So that is going to be a string. So I'm going to use my string one. I actually noticed another mistake I'm making right now, but we're just going to go back here, teams. Now I do want to load all of these into different arrays. So here's where we're loading into arrays. I want games played loaded to games played. I want last names loaded into last names. And I want points loaded into points array. And I want teams loaded into the teams array. Okay. So everything should run. There should be no errors. There should be no console log. Perfect. It's happy-ish. Now, I think, what should we do next here for you? I think we're going to start doing the HTML so that we can activate all. So this fetch, I want to happen at the very, very start. As soon as it loads the program, I want to do all this fetching. So then I'm going to do an event listeners, which means I need to go back to some HTML. Okay, what do I want that HTML to look like? So I want the person to be able to search the player they're looking for and then bring up some stuff about them. So let's just start with that. So we're going to do a paragraph. Enter the player you are looking for. Now, obviously, we have a very limited scope here of what we're doing, players, but that's okay. If it doesn't work for them, well, I'll just have to enter a different one. So we'll do an input. I'm going to make an ID for this. I'll call it name because their person's searching by the name. And then I'm going to make an empty paragraph. And I'm just going to call that one their stats. So we know this is where we're going to output their stats depending on what player you choose. And we'll just close that. Let's see. Okay, so enter the player you're looking for. Perfect. So I'm going to go back to my script then. And I now need to make some event listeners. Okay, I'm going to actually do something a little weird here. I'm going to just put a line all across here. So I know this is like loading text. We're doing something totally different here now. I am creating event listeners, which is nice because I only have one. I didn't have to make a button because of my change function. So document dot get element. Now maybe in this case you might want to hit submit. I don't know. I don't want to have to make a button, so that's how I'm deciding. I believe I called this name, and we want to add an event listener. Listener. I'm going to use change because I don't have a button, and then I want it to run. I want it to search for that name then. So search name is my function, which means I have to actually go and make that. Let's just hit play. Make sure that I haven't typed something wrong here. Oh, right. Search name is not a function. I just need to make that. So function, search name. And we're not going to pass in any parameters because what we're going to do is when it says search name, I want it to go and find that information. So we're going to do a document dot get element by ID. That output was stats. Okay, so output was stats. And what do I want to do with that? Oh no, sorry, I'm not doing the output yet. I'm still doing the input. Name. There we go. So we want to get the value from that. Now I need to store that somewhere though. What should I store it in? I'll call it search name. Oh no, I already called something that. So I'll just do let name equal whatever value. Let's just make sure everything's working. Console.log name. Function because I wrote function there. Okay, so if I say McDavid, I click somewhere else, it should run this function. Doesn't look like it. Oh, I'm not outputting it. Oh, I am. There we go. It outputs Kim, so whatever name I put in here. So if I put dry, I'm not even going to dare try to spell Draisaitl, something like that. Sorry, all hockey fans. So now it says Draisaitl. Okay, I will not be testing Draisaitl's name again. Okay, good. So we know that this is working, and it's actually taking it in. Now we have to do a search and actually look through each of the names and see and find the match for it. So we're going to do a for statement. So again, let I equal 0, where I is less than. Now these at this point already should have been loaded. So I'm going to say it has to be the size of the last names, dot length. It shouldn't be possible to be longer than that. And it gets bigger each time. And what am I looking for? I'm going to look for that player's name. So I'm going to say if last names and that element is equal to the name that the person has put in, I want something to happen. And again, I'm going to do a console.log and make sure, hey, this is actually working. And I'll say, I found it. Okay. So again, we're going to take the name from our input box and we're going to check. We're going to go through every element of the last names and check, hey, does that one work? Or does that name exist there? And if when we find it, we say, hey, I found it. Let's see if it works. So I'm going to type in McDavid with appropriate capital. I found it. Perfect. So far, so good. I'm going to stop the video here and I'll just make a second one.